Welcome to the New Warehouse Podcast, the podcast for those that are curious about what's possible inside their four walls. Before we get into this episode, let's hear a word from our sponsors that make this all possible. Do you feel like automation is unapproachable? Well, Big Joe Autonomous Solutions is changing that with the AP44. The AP44 is a fully autonomous pallet truck built for real work. Floor-to-floor pallet transportation, no infrastructure changes, no complicated IT project. Setup happens right at the onboard touchscreen. If you can use a smartphone, you can use the AP44. Just select a mission and the AP44 gets moving. Easy switch between fully autonomous, semi-autonomous, and manual mode on this pallet jack keeps it versatile. Learn more at BigJoeForklifts.com. That's BigJoeForklifts.com. Are you shipping orders? Of course you are. Are you getting cash back on your parcel spend? With Dash.fi, you can maximize cash back with their special focus on shipping spend. Leverage their corporate card platform to get cash back on your shipping spend and utilize their AI-powered audit tools to make sure your finances are tight. Don't leave money on the table. Check out Dash.fi at Dash.fi. Did you check your clipboard today? Throw that thing in the trash. It's time for a new way to run your dock and yard operations with Conduit. Streamline your dock scheduling, driver check-ins, yard management, and photo proof into one digital platform with Conduit's easy-to-use system. If you're still using clipboards, spreadsheets, whiteboards, or nothing at all, it's time to cut the chaos and get on Conduit. Go live in days, not months, at www.helloconduit.com/new warehouse. That's www.helloconduit.com/new warehouse. Temp agency let you down again? It's time for a different approach. Spotwork is the industrial labor marketplace built for modern warehouse operations. When you need available workers fast, Spotwork lets you post a job and get to hundreds of spotters in minutes. Spotwork's job fulfillment rates are above 95% across 35 markets in the U.S. No agency markups, no long-term commitments, and real human support around the clock. Head to spotwork.co to get the labor you need now, and make sure to mention the New Warehouse for a special promo. Thank you to our sponsors, and now let's get to the podcast.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. Now, today's episode, we have a returning guest, but one of our most legendary guests, I will say, Mr. Jim Tompkins, Dr. Jim Tompkins. I just introduced him at a conference recently on a keynote that he was delivering, and we thought that it would make sense to discuss this keynote on the podcast, which I definitely agree. We are going to be talking a little bit about AI, which I think most of you listening are probably talking about in some form or another. So we're going to talk a little bit about AI, how to approach it, and how does Jim see AI kind of fitting into warehouse operations and businesses overall, and how do leaders kind of navigate around that? So Jim is the chairman and founder of Tompkins Ventures. So Jim, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Kevin. I'm doing well, and it was good to see you in Texas, and it's good to see you again today. And look forward to this discussion. I hope I can stay on track because my brain is going like 86,000 miles an hour, and I'm speeding ahead, trying to keep up with everything that's happening. But it's an
Yes.
exciting time to be involved with warehousing and supply chain for sure.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's incredibly exciting, and it was great to see you in Texas at Supply Chain Point there, as you mentioned as well. But tell us a little bit about, we've had you on the show a couple times, so I think people are familiar with you, and you're certainly well known throughout the industry. But tell us a little bit about Tompkins Ventures for maybe people that aren't quite sure what that is.
So Tompkins Ventures is a kind of a new model business, which I could say I had a really clear strategic plan, and I figured out what would really work for these times. But that
Sure.
wasn't true. I left my old firm, and people called me on the phone, asked me for some help, and asked me for some more help. And next thing you know, I found myself to be kind of a matchmaker, and we were finding a client that had a problem, and we had a solution, and so we put the two together. And instead of the old business at Tompkins International, where we had a consulting team that could come in and do work and get paid for a project, we now had an ecosystem of experts who could serve clients' needs on an as-needed basis. It could be a fractional, it could be a full-time, it could be full-time for 2 months and then be done. So a variety of different ways of doing it. But then we didn't get paid on the project, we got paid on the results over time. And so the client had an opportunity to get, if you will, free consulting, because we don't charge for the upfront project. But then if we provide them benefits, we'll get paid over time by the solution providers that they are using. And so I went from asset heavy project revenue to asset light recurring revenue, which is actually a very smart thing to do. I wish I'd figured out I was going to do that, but it just happened, and I love it. It's sometimes you're smart and sometimes you're lucky.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think very interesting model for sure, and makes a lot of sense too for the changing times that we're in. And I know you kind of have this great pool of experts in their specific fields that you can kind of pull into that, which I think makes a lot of sense to be able to do that, and creates a lot of flexibility too on the different projects that you can handle or approach, right? So very interesting there. So let's dive into a little bit about what you talked around with the keynote there at Supply Chain Point and around AI specifically. So the keynote that you presented, the title was the Great Rebuild, right? And one of the major points of that was talking about kind of these 4 phases of artificial intelligence. And I think artificial intelligence is certainly a polarizing topic for a lot of people right now. I think a lot of people are trying to navigate, one, I think how they personally kind of feel about it, but also two, like, how do they apply it to their business? How don't they apply it to their business, et cetera? So maybe tell us a little bit about, what are those 4 phases of artificial intelligence that you presented there?
As I was preparing for the conference that you and I were at, I knew what the first 3 phases were. And so as I worked on the presentation to get phases 1, 2, and 3, phase 1 is easy to figure out because AI is just another tool. It's like you have an old hand drill and now you get an electric drill. And so you're going to do the same task that you used to do, but it's easier to do. And so AI as a tool is when Google started using BERT as a machine learning tool to allow us to have a better, quicker, more accurate search engine. And then it went from BERT, which was a machine learning tool, up to PALM, which was a large language model tool. And that tool became stronger and stronger. But step 1, it's just AI is a tool. And when I started using AI, I didn't even realize I was using AI. I was just using Google. Sure. And I thought, boy, it's become better. And then I read about it. And I thought, I'm using AI. So someone said, you're using AI? I said, yeah, I am. What are you doing? Well, I'm on Google. Well, that was all I was doing. So it wasn't very much to talk about. But then when we saw AI get stronger and ChatGPT came out in November of 2022, we said, oh, wow, this is not just a stronger tool. It now has become a worker. And so it's like getting an assistant. It's like hiring a supply chain analyst, and I can give this partner, a worker, an assignment. And so I can say to the worker, summarize this document for me. Here's a customer letter. Please write the draft for me, the response to this. Please help me identify good clients for these types of services. Draft me an email that allows me to explain to my employees a new policy we're going to implement. And so now it's actually doing work unto itself. So it's not a tool I use, but it's a worker doing assignments that I give it. And that had a lot more value to it because it was allowing me to take the simpler tasks off my plate.
Sure.
Well, then AI got stronger and stronger and stronger. In 2023, we started having what's called strategic reasoning, where strategic reasoning is not just task execution, but it's memory, it's agentic AI, and it's now actually autonomously taking actions. And so it's no longer a worker, it's not someone who is under me, it's now my partner. Because it's doing things better and quicker than I can, and it's actually executing these things. So level 3 was really quite exciting. And when I realized this was about 6 months ago, I was at level 3, and I thought, ooh, is there a level 4? I mean, this thing's been moving pretty quick.
Kick it up a notch.
And yeah. I mean, what's next? Is the brain went there? What's going to be next? And as I thought about that, where most people were 6 months ago is they were someplace between 2 and 3, someplace between a worker and a partner. But now AI got more power. It had more capability, and the trajectory of AI, the slope got greater. And what we saw is that there was a beginning of thinking about restructuring how the organization worked and how the people in the organization were working together. And so that begat us understanding, we've got this procurement guy that's really, really, really good.
Yeah.
And we're paying this guy $1 million a year. But the fact of the matter is we only use him 2 months a year. Yeah. The other 10 months a year, he's sitting in corporate meetings and having, discussions about this and that aren't his expertise. So if we really only need him 2 months a year, let's hire him 2 months a year and then let the AI take care of the other activities. And so there became things that became known as fractional expertise ecosystems. Sure. And interesting enough, Tompkins Ventures is a fractional expertise ecosystem. And what I saw is that phase 4, the AI capability allowed us to reduce our headcount. It allowed us to restructure how the organization functioned, and it gave us an opportunity to deploy this fractional expertise ecosystem. And we hit a point at phase 4 where we hit kind of an escape velocity. We're going quickly enough that we can escape, and we stop asking the question that I had been asking now for 2 years, should I use AI for this? And I used to ask that question every single day. So, should I use AI for this?
Yeah.
And we started asking the question, how do we reorganize the company around AI? And now, I thought, this isn't an advanced stage 3. This is a stage 4 because we've now hit the escape velocity and we become self-propelling. And we are now, escape velocity in physics is when you break free from the planet's gravitational pull. Well, breaking through the escape velocity for AI is where AI is no longer optional. AI is no longer experimental, and as AI is no longer what we're looking into. We are now focused on doing AI because of market forces, competitive pressures, and internal return on investment. And so this really kind of put us in a very good way, and it allowed us to really start thinking about what I now call the AI enabled enterprise.
Mm. Yeah, and I think very interesting, and interesting too to hear kind of your own kind of personal discovery amongst AI and interweaved in there as well. And I think I remember in the keynote you mentioned that, like, you've only been experimenting with AI for the last year or so, right? So it's also very new to you, but interesting to hear how kind of quickly you've gone through those phases and have gotten to this fourth phase that you describe here as kind of an AI enabled enterprise. And I'm curious, when you mentioned there, you say now we are, building around the AI, not trying to figure out how does AI play a part, or should we utilize AI? Should we not utilize AI for this? AI is kind of almost a central figure within the company itself, right? Do you think that is a good thing to be AI dependent almost, or are there some drawbacks to going down that path?
Well, certainly there's substantial drawbacks, and there's probably a lot of listeners that says, yeah, I've got 12 AI projects that didn't work, and I can tell you
Sure.
it wasn't worthwhile.
Uh-huh.
And so there's been a lot of experimentation, and there's been a lot of failures. There's been a lot of just absolute bonehead things done, and I've done a few of those myself.
Okay.
It's so have there been days when I was mad at AI? You're darn right I have been.
Yeah.
But what has occurred is that the AI capability has continued to advance and advance and advance. And so oftentimes when we have failures, it's not because AI failed, it's because we failed to apply it correctly. And so I think we really need to look at that. Because what happened in starting 2025, mid 2025, what we started seeing is that enterprises started to rely on AI.
Yeah.
That's when they became an AI enabled enterprise.
Sure.
And it's a big deal. First of all, what you find is the amount of people, the number of people that work in the company is fewer. And so, some people are afraid of AI because it's going to result in people losing jobs. It's true, it's going to happen. But the fact of the matter is, the people that pursue AI aren't doing it to cut heads, they're doing it to save heads.
Mm.
Because if your competition does AI and you don't, you're toast.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to lose, 70% of your jobs. You're going to lose 100% of your jobs.
Mm.
So it's that substantial. And some people aren't getting that. But what I've been doing I had this 1-year crash course you mentioned, and it's been coming and coming and coming, and it's coming so fast. In the old days, we'd have a new kind of way to think about things every 5 years or something. Now, AI, it's about every 5 days.
Mm.
We're thinking about
Yeah.
things differently. So the pace is unbelievable. So we're reducing our headcount. We're finding that leadership is more important than ever because we are traveling quickly, and leadership needs to define what are we going to do to grow next? What are we going to do to increase profitability next? And so they're not doing that once every 5 years. We're no longer doing 5-year strategic plans. Now we're saying, what is the thing that we need to do in the next 4 weeks to allow us to stay ahead of our competition? And so it's a very much more of a leadership orientation. And then what we have to ask the question is, when we have all these projects and all this fractional leadership going on, where do we get the data? AI will provide the data. In fact, what we will do is when we start, we're going to cleanse the data using AI, and we'll have the data available. You and I have worked on projects where we come on, we try to start our work, and it takes us 12 weeks to get the data.
Yeah.
Well,
Just to
now,
clean up, yeah.
now you push a button and you have the data, because a foundation of quality AI is quality data. If you don't have quality data, you've got a real problem. And so we now have AI provide the data. We have external organizations provide the talent. And what we do is we become bigger than our payroll.
Mm.
Okay, that's a cool way to think about that, I think, because what we do is we have the payroll of maybe 1,000 people, but the fact of the matter is we're having the impact of 20,000 people.
Mm.
And so we really, really, really shrink the payroll relative to the assignments that need to be done. And this, is a marvelous thing. And this is a result of what I call the rentability threshold, which is a thing that's gone on for years, but we haven't really thought about it, or at least I never thought about it. I never heard of anything called the rentability threshold.
Yeah, what is
but
that?
So the first time I think I experienced it, but I didn't put a name on it. But I definitely can recall it was 1999.
Okay.
And it was Salesforce. At that time in my company, I had 3 full-time programmers that were working on my sales funnel, on my marketing machine, and my client relationships. Okay. These 3 programmers cost me about $100,000 a year. This is 1999.
Sure.
Spent $100,000 a year. And then I heard about this thing called Salesforce. And Salesforce invented a tool that was the first multi-tenant subscription-based browser-delivered enterprise application of software as a service. What is software as a service? Software as a service says don't buy the software,
right?
Rent it. And so I was spending $100,000 a year with my own programmers, and now Salesforce for $18,000 a year gave me a stronger, more powerful CRM. And I didn't need a calculator to figure out those 3 people were gone.
Yeah.
And I was going to sign up for Salesforce. And so that's what we did. And so we didn't buy the software. We bought software as a service and we rented it.
Yeah.
Now wait, this even gets more fun, Kevin, because 7 years later, my CIO comes to me. He says, Jim, we've got so much software as a service going on. It's really great. We don't have any programmers left. Everything has been outsourced, but we're out of server capacity. We need more server capacity. And so I've gone out and looked, and here's the best thing we can do. For $300,000, we can buy this new server. It's going to fix us up. We'll be good for another 3 years. And I said, wow, okay, that's cool. And I said, are there any opportunities here? Are there any options I could pursue? He said, well, there's this company. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's called AWS. And
Sure.
I said, AWS. I said, now, that's Amazon, right? He said, well, yeah, it's a web service. He said, but what they've done is they've bought this huge amount of computer power. Instead of us buying it, what they'll do is they'll rent us what we want. And I said, wow. I said, what's that called? He said, that's cloud computing.
Yeah.
I said, cloud computing? Yeah. I said, well, so what do I have to pay? He said, you only pay for what you use. I said, well, we're only open here, 10 hours a day in the computer center. So I only have to pay for the 10 hours I'm using. Yes, yeah. Because other people in the world are going to be using it the other 14 hours. And I said, holy cow. And so guess what? We didn't buy a server.
Yeah.
We rented, we didn't buy. And so now in level 4, what we're going to do is we're going to buy our core competencies, because we need those people to get the job done. But if it's not a core competency, let's rent it. It makes all the sense in the world. Why do you have 4 transportation experts down there? Maybe we can outsource that to someone who can do a better job for us, and we'll just rent it. Why should we have our own warehousing? Well, if warehousing is a core competency, absolutely. Yeah. But if it's not a core competency, let's get a 3PL. What is a 3PL? It's renting instead of buying.
Yeah.
And so this is a very logical approach, and we've seen this repeated over and over and over since 2006. And Salesforce and Amazon Web Service were just the first 2. There's been example after example of the rentable threshold. And so what I want to do is I want that rentable threshold to come and really, come on down and give us the capability to reduce our cost, to increase our agility, to have greater capabilities, to accelerate execution. And that's what enables the AI enterprise. It's the rentable threshold that makes it powerful. So it's really cool how these things all kind of fit together. And the world was ready to do it before I figured it out. But
Yeah.
I think now there's a good part of the world that hadn't figured it out yet, and we're still someplace around 3.2, 3.3, and I want to get to 4.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's interesting. I mean, and there's obviously a lot of things that kind of rentability threshold that you talk about unlocks, right? The ability for companies to grow faster, as you mentioned, and be more flexible, do more different things without kind of the overhead and the cost burdens that maybe have been barriers to them in the past there. So I think I know the answer to this question for you, but if we look a couple years ahead, I mean, is being an AI enabled enterprise or company, is that even an option, 3 years from now?
No, it's I mean, you must be an AI enabled company or you will be gone. Not being an AI enabled company is not an option. Now, if you're in the service business, if you're in the restaurant business, yeah, you can make it. But if you're in anything that has a physical supply chain, you're either going to be AI enabled and doing your core competency and outsourcing the other, or you will be history because the competition is going to be mopping the floor with you.
Yeah.
And so it's and some people say 2 years, isn't that awful fast? Well, it seems fast to me, but at the pace we're moving, it almost feels like it's slow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think when you look at, you're talking about, 5 days, different iterations and things just coming out all the time. I mean, even, here at the podcast, we operate on Google Workspace. I mean, even the features that are just popping up in the various Google different programs and apps is, I'm, also sometimes like, oh, I didn't know we could do this, but now we can do this and we can do that and we can do that. So these new things all the time, they're just kind of coming up, which I think, allows us to move so much quicker. So now let's talk a little bit about, because, this is the new warehouse podcast. So we got to talk about the warehousing industry here. So obviously, what you're talking about with AI applies to multiple different industries, multiple different company types and things of that nature. But you mentioned in there, kind of the core competencies, right? So if you are the 3PL or one of your core competencies is that physical warehousing aspect, right? Obviously, there's still some physical aspects to that. There's still some human involvement. We're moving towards more and more automation, but I think full on kind of lights out, dark automation warehouses for the masses is pretty far away, right? So we're still going to have that human element in there. So how do you look at these 4 phases of AI that you talked about, and how do they impact? How do they play out for the people that have warehousing, distribution, fulfillment as core competencies?
Well, it begins before the truck arrives. Okay, and so it begins with the truck scheduling. It begins with the yard management. It begins with making sure we get the right truck in the right door. So we eliminate a lot of cross traffic for the fork trucks running back and forth. It has a lot to do with container storage. Let's store, if we're going to have containers stored on site, let's store them in a ways that we're going to spend the least money retrieving them. And so it begins with the yard and the scheduling, and it's going to substantially reduce the wait time for truck drivers. We should be eliminating the need for truck drivers lounge. The driver should pull in. We should unload his stuff. We should either release him or pull him back up and have him go on his. way. But having a truck driver sitting on site for 4 hours a day, we say we have a truck driver shortage. No, we've got an inefficiency yard and receiving area that's killing the driver. The driver only gets paid when he's driving,
Right.
and he's going to spend 3 hours a day sitting in some lounge someplace. See, that's not what his desire is.
Yeah.
I mean, the food in most truck drivers' lounges I've been is not a place you want to go back
that
to.
great. No.
Yeah. Maybe there's some popcorn from yesterday, but not so good. And then within the warehouse, it does the whole labor management thing. And so what you're able to do with AI is, okay, I thought I was going to have 48 people, but Beth and Bob didn't make it in today. So I only got 46 people. How do I reallocate these 46 people to allow me to have a good next 2 hours in my warehouse? Look at the orders that need to be picked. Look at what I need to receive. Look what I need to be processing, and tell me what's the best allocation of those 46 people for the next 2 hours. And then an hour and a half later, tell me how I should change that allocation. And maybe what I should be doing there is wave picking, and maybe I ought to do a wave that's 2 hours long. And then I come back 2 hours later and I said, with the work we presently have and with where we are in the day, it's around noon now, we got a 3 o'clock cutoff. Should we continue to run 2 hour waves? And you look at it and say, no, we'll switch to a 1 hour wave. And by the way, here is 22 orders we have that are hot that must go today. Let's not even put them through the wave process. Let's let these be individual order picked. And so you give this to a person, and they're going to go pick the whole warehouse and finish that order and get it packed to make sure it gets out today. And so we're going to do the total labor management thing. It's going to help us when we do the put away with the slotting and the dynamic slotting. Literally, we're going to have slotting based on what's happening today. And they're going to be able to look at what's been the trend in the last 2 weeks and how do we reslot the warehouse in real time. It's going to allow us to do dynamic picking where we change from 2 hour wave to 4 hour wave to 1 hour wave to pick and pass to setting up a fast pick line. It's going to look at your order and say, we don't know what's going on in marketing, but it seems like a lot of people are buying 2 shirts and 1 baseball. So let's set up a fast pick line with these shirts and these variety, and let's put a bunch of baseballs at the end. You grab the 2 shirts, you put the baseball, and that's the order. And we're going to get 7% of today's orders picked in about an hour in this fast pick line we set up. And AI will do that for you. And then what we're going to do is go through sortation and staging, and how do we sort, where do we stage, where do we put that truckload? Where is that truck going to come in to make sure it's right by where we did the staging? And then how do we manage shipping? And so except for receiving, put away, picking, packing, and shipping, we're not going to use AI much in warehousing. Unfortunately, that's everything in the warehouse, or fortunately.
Yeah.
So it's gonna impact and none of this is theoretical. Everything I've said in the last 2 minutes, we're absolutely doing with AI today. Yeah. And it's and you got plenty of listeners that are saying, yeah, we're not doing the dynamic picking. We pick the same way all year long, but boy, I could see how that would really be helpful.
Yeah.
And get our orders out quicker and less labor. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the, exciting things for me as a former ops manager is, understanding that, okay, we can do these things in the midst of everything happening, right? We're able to get these signals, able to make these changes. AI can give us these suggestions on what to do, or maybe in some cases, take the action itself within the WMS or whatever may happen. Whereas a lot of times, going back to earlier in my career, 10 years ago or so, like it was very much a lot of times we're catching that like after the fact. It was more like, oh, we could have done this, so next time
Yes.
we could do this, right? It was more reactive than proactive in a sense there. So when we look at that, obviously, from the physical movement of products, right? I mean, there's got to be some human touch that's going in there, some equipment that's evolved, but if we get more efficient, right, then the touches should reduce in a sense, the time it takes to do those things. So as leaders, specifically within the warehousing industry, like where do you see the boundary line between the human element and then the AI that's coming into play? What types of roles do you think are maybe not long for this world in a sense? And how do you kind of manage that as someone that leads these warehouse operations?
Yeah, a great question, and it's very interesting to understand this and dig deep in it. So AI should be done when we're doing automated processing. Okay. And so that could be any one of a number of things. That could be information retrieval. It could be pattern recognition. It could be summarization or synthesis. It could be optimization, where we're trying to optimize something. It could be monitoring. Monitor these tasks. And if we fall behind on the schedule, let me know. And so that's awesome work for AI.
Sure.
To the contrary, the human is needed when we need to use judgment. And it's not just about information. It has to do with values and priorities and trade-offs and consequences. And so when we're dealing with something that has some ambiguity to it, it's not perfect, it's not black and white. And we need to have some judgment. If we're dealing with issues of ethics, if we're dealing with issues of risk, if we're dealing with issues of strategy, it's these types of things. If we're dealing with relationships, how do we best, this is our best customer, how do we let them know what's happening? How do we communicate with them? And maybe the best thing is not to send them an email. Yeah, we got a system that automatically the system can send them an email, but maybe it's better if, hey, Kevin, why don't you give this guy a call and tell him what's happening here, and so he can understand what we're going through. And so I think it's really interesting to see how these decisions are made. Probably my best overall general rule I have: if it's something that has a right answer, let AI do it. If it's something where you're looking for a reasonable answer, ask the human to do it. Because AI doesn't have the capability of dealing with emotions and risk and relationships, but obviously the human does. And so we're very, very different beasts, and we need to know when to use which lever and how to apply that. So you're right on. It's a great, great, great question that needs to be thought through clearly.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to put it, because I often think of it as the AI, or even when we talk about some of the automation and robotics and things that happen within the warehouse operations, is they think very black and white, right? It either is or it isn't, right? Whereas the human can start to think about, like you said, there may not be a totally clear answer, but here's a reasonable step forward, right? Or here's a reasonable action that we can try to go through or navigate, right, and understand those different things. So I think that's a great way to kind of decipher that. And now, around AI too, I mean, obviously, that's part of the skepticism from some people, right, is what happens to the human of it all. But one of the other challenges that I've heard a lot as I've talked to operators specifically that are trying to do things with AI, they see the opportunity there. They see the potential and the possibilities of what they can do internally versus having to go externally now with some of the AI tools that are available. One of the challenges they have is getting overall kind of security buy-in from the IT side and from leadership buy-in as well. So what is your kind of advice on how to navigate that, and how do you advise companies from, I guess, from the security side mostly, like that? Yeah, you got to figure this out, and you got to figure it out quickly, because it seems like a lot of the conversations I've had, it's usually IT becomes kind of a blocker because they're not sure about this tool or that tool and the access that they can have or not have. How do you view that?
So I think that's an extremely interesting topic. There's only one topic that becomes more phooey, I guess, a way of saying it, and that's the quality of data, and how are we going to get the quality of the data and therefore minimize hallucinations, and how are we going to get IT's buy-in and therefore solve the cybersecurity issues? Those are the two really big topics we need to look at. And I think this begins with a kind of a human aspect. What a lot of people want to say is, hey, if my data is bad, it's going to hallucinate and I'm going to get a bad solution and my boss is going to fire me. I mean, it's not going to be a good thing. Or we're going to give up some secure information and we're going to give it away and it's going to wind up to be a disaster and I'm going to get fired. Two important things. I don't want to get fired.
Sure.
I mean, and will you get fired if you start having hallucinations? Your system starts telling everyone your order is going to be a day late when in fact it's on time. Yeah, you'll be fired. I mean, that's not a good thing. So these are very, very, very important. And it's very important we solve these. So we need to fix the hallucination problem by having quality data. We need to fix the the cybersecurity issue by having good governance. So we need to do those things. And so that's what we should be working on. Don't say, oh, this is terrible. I'm not going to do AI because of the cybersecurity and IT won't let. No. You have to do. You already asked the question, can we exist 2 years from now? The answer is no. We have to do this. And so what does that mean? Well, that means you have to get your data right. That means you have to get your cybersecurity right. And that's really important that we do that. And so there's AI out there that helps you get your AI data straight. There's AI out there that is great on cybersecurity, and there's AI out there that is terrible on cybersecurity. So when Mr. IT says to you, that is not going to meet my cybersecurity requirements, the answer is yes, sir, yes, ma'am. We need to get that fixed. How can we work on that? Because you need to have that happen. So I don't want to just say, oh, well, just forget that. That's quit moaning and groaning and get it done. Well, no, because this is really, really, really important. But what we need to do is we need to find the solution to these problems and then solve it. And therefore, we will end the cybersecurity problems because we got good governance. We will end the hallucination problem because we got valuable quality data. And now we can make this happen. So critically important issues. If you don't address these two issues, you're going to fail. There's no way you can have the system hallucinating. And what is this hallucination thing? Well, this hallucination thing is the way a lot of AI works. It does what's called pooling. And so let's say I give it a 50-page report. I said, read this report and tell me about this, this, and this. Well, it doesn't read a 50-page report. It might say, I'm going to read 10 pages at a time. He's going to read the first 10 pages and summarize it. And read the next 10 pages and summarize it. Next 10, next 10. And now it's got 5 summaries of 10 pages. And now it's going to take those 5 summaries and put it together and summarize it. That's called polling. It's going to summarize what it has learned. If in the first summary it told you, so let's say we asked a question to AI, are horses ever white? Well, the way it did the polling, it gets the idea that horses are brown, orange, or black, because the way it did the polling.
Sure.
Okay. So now it's asked the question, are horses ever black? And it checks the whole thing. Is the horse ever white? It checks the whole thing, and it doesn't have an answer. And they say, well, we don't know. So what it does is it extrapolates. And when it extrapolates, it's guessing. You and I guess much better than AI does.
Yeah.
And so AI is going to say, well, in none of these 5 summaries do we have someone referring to a white horse. And therefore, I'm going to say, no, horses can't be white. Well, what a smart AI programmer does, it tells the system, anytime you find yourself extrapolating, send a message to Kevin and ask Kevin the question, we're trying to figure out if horses are ever white. Do you have an opinion on that? Or can you do additional search before I hallucinate and put out a bad answer? So we've just ended hallucination because we told AI, when you get stuck, don't guess unless you tell me. If you're going to guess, tell me. I will then confirm one way or the other, and then we'll move forward.
Yeah.
And so, we can beat these things, but we got to use our heads.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that makes so much sense because I've certainly been there before. I've gone back and forth with Gemini, actually, in particular, and I was asking it to look at the information that's in a Google sheet and give me, these answers, and it's giving me, and I'm like, I know this is not in that sheet, and I'm like, can you see the sheet? It's like, yes, you're right. I gave you the wrong answer. Here's an answer, and I'm like, no, that's not in the sheet. It's just going back and forth. And then finally, I just asked it, like, can you see the sheet? And it's like, no, you're right. I cannot see the sheet. And I'm like, okay, all right. So you're just guessing. Yeah. So very interesting there, and really interesting, discussion here around AI specifically. I think there's, we are in such a interesting time where the evolution is so quick, as we've talked about, and there's such a large spectrum, I think, on where people are in terms of those 4 phases that you talked about, and also kind of questioning where do they want to be and how do they get there. But I think as we kind of talked about today, I mean, you got to get there, right? Or you're kind of getting left behind, right, by your competition. And I think even though there's some of those hurdles that we talked about, whether it's, data cleanliness and accuracy or security, you need to overcome those hurdles and figure out how to do that to move forward as an organization as a whole. So as we close out this conversation, I want to ask you, for anybody that's listening, like, what is maybe like your one piece of advice on how to navigate AI into your organization? What is the top piece of advice you would give somebody?
Hang on to your hat.
Okay.
A steady state is history. Steady state is obsolete. Disruption is the new normal. Don't be surprised by surprises. In fact, you need to kind of expect the unexpected, because there's going to be capability that's going to exist that you don't really get. The pace of change is going to be unbelievable, and resisting change will result in failure, as we discussed. So embrace change, really dig deep in understanding, why am I having this problem? Who can help me with this problem? The first choice I have every time now?
What's that?
I ask AI.
Yeah, sure.
I ask AI, why is this happening? And oftentimes it will either know, or it'll give you some options as what might be happening. And so it's really important that we hang on our hat, we hang on our hats and we go for it, because the time is passing quickly. I mean, 2 years are going to be done before you and I blink our eyes.
Yeah.
And there's going to be, remember Blockbuster?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Back in 2008, my wife and I went to Blockbuster every Friday and every Tuesday night. Why? Because we wanted a date night and we were going to get a movie.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember when I graduated with my PhD, one of my classmates got a job offer at Kodak. And I said, oh, wow, that's the job of the century. You're going to wind up to be a vice president there. And that company is just, that company's going to flourish for all times.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Kodak went bankrupt in, I think it was 2012.
Sure.
So the giants do die. And if we're not really, really out there pushing the boundaries, we could wind up working for one of those companies that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's great advice there, and kind of puts the real spotlight on the importance of getting up to speed and making sure you're navigating the change and at least bringing it into the organization to explore. So very great to talk to you today, Jim. As always appreciate getting you on the show here. If people want to get in touch with you or learn more about Tompkins Ventures, what's the best way to do that?
So my email is jtompkins, as in Jim Tompkins, Tompkins. For the Southerners, there's no H. The Northerners know there's no H in Tompkins, but the Southerners always want to spell it differently. So it's jtompkins at tompkinsventures.com. Ventures has an S on the end. So tompkinsventures.com.
All right, fantastic. And we'll definitely put that at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in the show notes here as well. So, Jim, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.